Okay, I want to talk about Hillary Clinton and her giant fail of a 2016 campaign. She just will not let it go. Hillary Clinton is making her rounds on her book tour. What happened? Hillary Clinton is out today. She still cannot get over her loss because the loss was a referendum on her personally. The loss was a referendum on Hillary Clinton personally. No one liked Hillary Clinton. I got the election wrong in terms of the result, but I did get this right. I said throughout the election that this election was not going to be a referendum on Trump. It was going to be a referendum on Hillary Clinton. That Trump was stuck between 40 and 43%, and Hillary was bouncing around between 39 and 50, because people couldn't decide whether they hated her or whether they were quasi-lukewarm on her. And in the end, it turns out that they hated her. Well, Hillary cannot accept that answer, and so she continues to trot out various explanations for why she lost. So today, she did an interview with USA Today, and she said there was a communication, and there certainly was an understanding of some sort between the Russians and the Trump campaign. She says, there's no doubt in my mind Putin wanted me to lose and wanted Trump to win. And there's no doubt in my mind there are a tangle of financial relationships between Trump and his operation with Russian money. And there's no doubt in my mind the Trump campaign and other associates have worked really hard to hide their connections with the Russians. Okay, again, does she have any evidence of any of this? No, this is all a conspiracy theory until she can provide evidence of any of this. But she says, I'm convinced of it. She says, I happen to believe in the rule of law and believe in evidence, so I'm not going to go off and make all kinds of outrageous claims. She just did 1 second ago, right? She says, but if you look at what we've learned since the election, it's pretty troubling. And then she talked about other people to blame. She blamed James Comey. She said it was Comey's fault that she lost. She says that Comey shivved her. She says his unusual announcement 11 days before the election revealing her new trove of emails ended up screwing her in the 3 upper Midwest states. She said, my first instinct was that my campaign should hit back hard and explain to the public that Comey had badly overstepped his bounds. My team raised concerns with that kind of confrontational approach. In the end, we decided it would be better to let it go and try to move on. Looking back, that was a mistake. Again, Hillary blaming her aides, not blaming herself. This is the problem for Hillary Clinton. It's the problem for the Democratic Party. They cannot look internally and say to themselves, what did we do to alienate all these people? So instead, what they're doing is they're doing more of the same. So the big news for Democrats today in the last few days has been their continuous and constant focus on Medicare for all. Okay, this is their new pitch, right? It's Bernie Sanders' old pitch, this Medicare for all pitch, this idea that we are going to supplement Obamacare with a scheme whereby everyone is covered by Medicare, because Medicare is great, yay. There are only a few problems with this. One, there's very little evidence that shows that Medicare has actually improved health outcomes for people. The reason for that is because most doctors are now rejecting new Medicare patients. The reimbursement rates are not high enough for doctors to take new Medicare patients. Also, Medicare is already $58 trillion in unfunded liabilities and debt. 58 trillion. If you're talking about expanding Medicare for all, making, me eligible for Medicare, not based on age, not based on health, not based on income, then what you're really talking about is adding $14 trillion to the national debt in the next 10 years alone, which means that it'll end up being double or triple that over the next 20, because that's how every government program always works. But now this has been embraced right across the board because Democrats can't accept. The reason they lost is not because they didn't offer people enough free stuff. Hillary offered lots of free stuff. The reason they lost is not because they didn't run Bernie Sanders, okay? Bernie Sanders offered people a lot of free stuff. The reason they lost is because they have contempt for the American people. Democrats have contempt for the American people, particularly white people living in Midwestern states. They think these people are rubes, they think these people are fools, and they think these people ought to be on the losing end of American politics. That's why they lost in 2016. They ran the most corrupt harridan in American history, and she lost. And she lost because she called half the country deplorables. And then they're surprised that happened, and they doubled down on all of these things. They're still calling Trump supporters deplorables. They're still suggesting that Trump supporters are a group of people who are universally white supremacist. Ta-Nehisi Coates has a piece in The Atlantic in which he discusses Trump's election. What does he attribute Trump's election to? He says that Trump's election was not attributable to Hillary Clinton. It was instead attributable to racism. That's right. It was all about Trump's racism. It was about his signaling to his white base that he was going to wipe away the achievements of Obama. All right, now, I said during the election cycle that I thought that Trump did not do enough to distinguish himself from the alt-right, that he was sort of covertly and in some ways overtly pandering to the alt-right because he thought they were an important part of his base. But he was not doing that in opposition to Obama. He was doing that in opposition to the intersectional left, of which Ta-Nehisi Coates is a part. The people who say that identity is inextricably intertwined with politics, that white people are part of a white privileged society, keeping black people and Hispanic people down. That's what people were reacting to, not Obama. Obama remains the most popular politician in America. Michelle Obama is right now leading primary polls among Democrats. So the idea that that it's really about backlash to Obama. That's what all this was. That's not true. It's backlash to intersectionality. But Democrats have to find something other than themselves to blame. Because if they looked in the mirror, then they would actually have to examine what they've done wrong here. And they've done some things pretty wrong, including insulting the American people on a regular basis. Okay, so because the Democrats can't accept that they lost, they continue to trot out Hillary Clinton as some sort of tragic figure. And some of it's really funny. So according to USA Today, there are poignant moments in her book, particularly as she describes trying to get through the first days and weeks after the election. The suit she had chosen to wear for her victory speech, white, the color of the suffragettes, stayed in the garment bag. You remember when she wore the white suit at the convention. For the concession speech the next morning, she wore a gray and purple suit she had planned to wear on her first trip to Washington as president-elect. Purple, the color combination of red and blue, was designed as a subtle tip to bipartisanship. Okay, I still do get a kick out of the fact that she's not the president. And whatever I think of Trump, and how he is behaving lately and how he is legislating, I am very happy she is not president. She says, on Inauguration Day, watching a rival she had warned was a threat to the nation being sworn into the job she assumed would be hers, she focused as she walked down the west front of the Capitol on breathing. In, out. Scream later, she told herself. I'm sure she did, and I'm sure she hurled a few lamps and such. So, just amazing. She says, what makes me such a lightning rod for fury? I'm really asking. I'm at a loss. Well, that you're super corrupt, and that you are super rehearsed, and that you are incredibly partisan, and that you think half the country is filled with terrible people. That, I think, is probably the problem for Hillary Clinton. And when she's speaking with Democrats, she basically admits as much. So she was on the Pod Save America podcast earlier today, and here's what she said. Okay, she was asked about Putin and the association with Trump. Apparently in the book she says, quote, Trump doesn't just like Putin, he wants to be like Putin. Put down dissenters, repress minorities. He dreams of Moscow on the Potomac. And she writes this in her book, Moscow on the Potomac. That's what Trump is dreaming of, which is a wild exaggeration. Okay, everyone keeps saying Trump is a fascist. Trump hasn't gotten anything done or imprisoned anyone. Legitimately, the biggest problem with Trump right now is that nothing is happening. And then he's caving to Democrats. So it's hard to claim that he's a fascist when at the same time he's cutting deals with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. But here's what Clinton said. She said, yes, I'm really happy to say that to the three of you because you have influence and you have reach. Look, I wrote this book to try and come to grips with what happened, but also to sound the alarm about what I think could still and may well happen. I think Trump, left to his own devices unchecked, would become even more authoritarian than he has tried to be. Also, remember the right wing aided and funded by Mercers, Koch brothers, etc., is very serious about calling a constitutional convention. Okay, the Koch brothers, by the way, are libertarians. They need 34 states. Last I checked, they were at 28 or 29. This would be the convention of states pushed by people like Mark Levin to check the power of the federal government. But she doesn't understand that the convention of states has nothing to do with Trump. The convention of states was moving long before Trump. There are a lot of people who support a convention of states, like me, who are not advocates for the president, particularly when he does things that are wrong. She says, part of their gerrymandering is to control state legislatures, elect Republican governors, call a constitutional convention. If you get really deep into what they are advocating, limits on the First Amendment, no limits on the Second Amendment, limits on criminal justice. I mean, there's a very insidious right-wing agenda. Limits on the First Amendment? Who's talking about limiting the First Amendment? It's the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, who has talked about things like hate crimes laws, hate speech laws, things like, let's make sure that if you are an LLC, you can't spend money on politics. She says, when I say that he doesn't just like Putin, he wants to be like Putin, I'm not saying he's going to start killing journalists, but I am saying he likes the idea of unaccountable, unchecked power. Okay, Hillary Clinton saying this, people who like the idea of unaccountable, unchecked power, yeah, Hillary, we all know why you lost. And this, again, is why everyone thinks that 2020 is going to be a referendum on Trump. We'll find out. It depends on who they nominate. Okay, everyone talks about Trump being low in the opinion polls. Bottom line is, really, really depends on who the Democrats nominate. And if they think that they can run the same campaign they ran in 2016 and just add single-payer health care, they are desperately mistaken. Democrats have a serious problem in 2020. They don't want to admit it. They have a serious problem. They're still using Obama's coalition and Hillary's strategy, and they're combining it with Bernie's pie-in-the-sky economics. And they have to, because in the primaries, if you say you're not for single payer, then the Democratic primary vote is too far to the left, and they'll throw you out. But when you get into a general, try to tell people their health care is going to be completely taken away from them and see how that goes. It's the only way honestly, Democrats are so bad at this. All they truly have to do right now on health care is just shut up, watch it collapse, and blame Trump. That's really all they have to do. And instead, what they're doing is they're going out there with a single-payer plan that allows them to look like the ones who want to change health care. The rule about health care is whoever changes it gets punished politically. This is why Republicans didn't end up changing it. Right? Democrats are trying to change it again, but towards single payer, which demonstrates, by the way, that they were liars all along. Democrats are really terrible at this. Thank God. Okay, we will be back here tomorrow. And I'm sure I'm going to try and go get a copy of Hillary's book today, and I'll analyze it for you tomorrow, hopefully. But we'll have much more in any case. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show.
In her 512-page memoir, Hillary Clinton is candid about losing the presidency to Donald Trump.
I felt like I had let everybody down.
Clinton blames herself for using a private email account when she was Secretary of State that led to a government investigation. But she also questions former FBI Director James Comey's motivations for reopening the investigation less than 2 weeks before the election.
It just stopped my momentum. Now remember this too, Jane. At the same time he does that about a closed investigation, there's an open investigation into the Trump campaign and their connections with Russia.
Clinton's loss to Donald Trump was one of the most stunning in U.S. political history. The veteran Washington insider versus the brash outsider. Although she won the popular vote, she lost the electoral vote primarily because 4 large swing states and 3 traditional Democratic states voted for Trump. Clinton's critics say her failure to connect with working class voters is a lesson for the Democratic Party.
One of the main questions that Democrats are asking themselves is, how do we actually connect with a huge part of the country that used to vote Democratic and doesn't reliably do so anymore?
Still, some political scientists say Clinton was a victim of bad timing.
So there is a reality that out of the 6 individuals who have run for a 3rd term of their party, only one of them has won. So if she had really thought about the odds are more like that she had about a 17% chance of actually succeeding President Obama.
Clinton's return to the spotlight is making some in her own party uneasy. They fear her book could further alienate progressive Democrats who favored Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders for the party's nomination last year. Sanders seemed to agree in a recent talk show.
We need her help to go forward. Let's not keep arguing about 2016.
Clinton says she's closing the book on being a candidate, but isn't necessarily closing the book on politics. Still, she won't say how she'll write her next chapter. Diane Estabrook, Al Jazeera, Washington.